ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our Saturday morning session. Today we will talk about two facets of consciousness, that is bodiless consciousness and embodied consciousness. In the past few sessions we saw how the Rig Veda and its suktas lay down the foundation for Upanishads. And today we will go into this subject to understand how this entire functioning of body mind complex with consciousness actually acts and intermingles. So we will start with pure consciousness. Now, what is pure consciousness? Pure consciousness is basically what we call the ultimate, irreducible, indestructible reality. Let me repeat it. The ultimate, irreducible, indestructible reality. The reality which exists, it, it is by nature infinite, apparition. It is everywhere infinite. It is indivisible, that is akhand, and it is formless, that is arup. So it is apparition, it is arup, and it is akhand. It exists in whole, everything in totality. Now, to understand this, let us take an example of Akash, sky. Now, Akash exists everywhere. It is infinite. It is not in khand, it is akhand, it's whole, everywhere. Even if you construct a wall in between, it doesn't get khaddit, it remains akhand. The wall is also occupying the Akash, and Akash is on both sides of the wall. And it has no form, it is formless. So, Akash is the nearest explanation that we can find to what we call pure consciousness, which is infinite, which is formless, and which is complete or whole, which is not in parts. Now, that consciousness is the playground of everything that we see. Like sky or Akash is the playground for all the galaxies, all the solar systems, all the planets, all the satellites, and whatever that may exist. Similarly, consciousness is the playground for everything that exists, including Akash. It is far more subtle than Akash, and therefore it is what we call avyakt. It cannot be understood or grasped by our sense organs. So this is what we call bodiless pure consciousness. It is everywhere. It is not in parts. It is not in form. And it is complete in every respect. Now, there is a inevitability of this pure consciousness. The pure consciousness is called Shiva. Now, Shiva is, we can call it like consciousness in dormant form. And then it is activated by Shakti. Now, no power can exist without the power holder. Similarly, no power holder can exist without power. They are completely interdependent. Like, let's take an example of real world here. We have a constitution of a country. Now, that constitution is like the dormant power. And then the institutions come out of it, the executive, the judiciary, the parliament, and other institutions. Those are the power holders. The power is actually exercised through those institutions. So these institutions cannot exist without the power, that is the constitution. Similarly, the constitution has no meaning unless those institutions come into being. Similarly, the pure consciousness in the form of Shiva is dormant, and the Shakti actually activates it and makes it work. So the Shiva and Shakti, they coexist and they exist simultaneously. Now, this is very important to understand how this Shakti activates the power, the Shiva, and how this world is then created. Like the constitution creates the institutions, similarly, the Shiva or the Shakti, the, the two put together, they create the entire manifest world. Now let us take example again from the Akash. Now Akash is completely indivisible, undivided. It is whole, it is infinite. But then we can create with consciousness, we can create a house. The house is nothing but Akash. The space inside, we call it the bedroom or bathroom or kitchen or drawing room. That is all space, that is part of Akash. So we created a house by dividing the Akash, and we think that this house is important. We forget about Akash. We give our attention to the house, to the godowns, to the playgrounds, to the theaters, to the roads, to the cities, and we ignore the Akash. While everything comes from that Akash, everything is a mini version of that Akash. But because these things are visible, these things are tangible, these things can be grasped through our sense organs, we forget that Akash and we concentrate on this my house or his house or my city or the other city, my neighborhood and somebody else's neighborhood, my car and somebody else's car. So we actually ignore the foundation behind this manifestation, and we start giving more and more attention to the manifestation. This is what happens. Now, this manifestation which occurs, this manifestation can be altered anytime. A house can be demolished and converted into a warehouse. A theater can be demolished and converted into a shopping mall. So all that changes are possible. But despite those changes, the Akash remains unaltered. It remains inside and it remains outside. And it remains even in the walls of those constructions. So this is the reality we have to understand, that the body mind complex which comes into existence in this universe, that converts the infinite consciousness into finite experience. This is a very, very important characteristic. The experience of an open, vast, infinite sky is converted into an experience of a small house or a shopping mall or a theater or a warehouse. Now, this is how the pure infinite consciousness is also restricted or limited by body mind complex. And then our experience remains confined to the limits of that body, whatever may be that body. So, this is the reality which we should understand. Then we should also know that this body mind complex can be altered, like a godown can be converted into a house, or a theater can be converted into a shopping mall. Similarly, the body mind complexes keep altering. Today we may have a human body, tomorrow the same space, or I mean the same consciousness or same spirit, can have another body, a body of an animal, body of a fish, a body of something else. So this is alterable. But the consciousness, bodiless consciousness, which is spread over infinitely everywhere, whatever we see, aparichind, arup, and akhand, that does not change, that remains as it is. Like the akash remains as it is, we keep changing the, even the, the planets keep changing in akash. Today there may be a solar system, tomorrow that may disappear. A galaxy can disappear, the earth can disappear. Similarly, houses and cities can disappear, new things can come up. But the akash remains unaltered, it is infinite. That experience is always there. Now, beyond that akash, where that akash comes from, that is what we call it pure consciousness, which is also called Brahma in our Shastras. But to understand in a scientific manner, it is pure consciousness which is spread over in entire universe. And that is the foundation from where everything else is created. And that foundation is Shiva, and Shakti is the power, the movement, which is created in that consciousness to create manifest world, manifest universe. And from there, the five great elements arise, including Akash. And then all types of creations we see, they manifest. So this is a fundamental truth of our existence. But what actually happens in practice is that we are all the time occupied with the manifest world without realizing the cause behind that manifestation. And that manifest world keeps us occupied. So this theater is very enchanting. We forget about the pure consciousness, but we think about various manifest things which are there in this universe. whether they are animals or trees or rivers and mountains and humans, yeah, whatever else. It is exactly like a film. When you go to a theater, you sit down in front of a screen where what you find is sound and light playing their role. There are no persons there, there's no human being there. There's only sound and light show. And that sound and light show becomes very enchanting. For 2 3 hours, we forget everything else. Sometimes we identify with the characters. We start crying. We become emotional. We start waiting what happens next. eh? How the cruel person is, becoming successful, and the gentleman is being tortured. And the entire 2 3 hour period in which we are sitting there becomes enchanting. We forget about our own existence. We forget where we came from, where we are. Similarly, in this manifest world, this manifest things, they become very enchanting. While the foundation on which that appear, that is not our concern. We forget about that. That entire purpose of spirituality or adhyatmic gyan is to understand that foundation, where that foundation come from, how it operates, and how the manifest world come into being. That manifest world has limitations. It is not asimit. It is not aparichan. It is parichan. It is not arup. It has roop. It has form. It is not formless. It is not whole. It is only a part. It is khand. It is not akhand. It is not the theater. It is the actor in the theater. The pure consciousness is the theater where everything is played. While the manifest world which appears is only a player in the theater. So if we understand this analogy, then we will understand that we are merely a player in this theater, and we have been sent into existence, or we have come into existence because of the play between Shiva and Shakti. Now, how that operates? As I mentioned, the power cannot exist without power holder, and power holder cannot exist without power. It looks a bit of a contradiction, but this is how it is. The power holder must have power, and that power comes from where? Like in the case of constitutional bodies, the power comes from the constitution. The prime minister's power comes from the constitution. The judicial power comes from the constitution. Now, if they are powerless, if they don't have power, the prime minister and judiciary, their existence has no meaning. Similarly, the constitution is dormant without manifestation of these bodies. Exactly in the real world, the pure consciousness, if it is dormant, it cannot become an actor. It cannot play a role. It remains dormant. So Shakti activates it and creates first the Prakriti with, the we call it autumn of the autumn, yeah? And then slowly the five great elements. And with the combination of five great elements, multiple things come into existence, trillions of things come into existence. So, from singularity, from one singularity, that is bodiless consciousness, comes all these pluralities which we see in the world. Trillions of things come from there. And that is what we call Shakti, functioning of Shakti on Shiva. And in some, actually, in many of ancient writings, this whole process has been described as Maya. All this manifest world, which comes from one single force, that becomes so enchanting for us that we forget that force and we remain constantly engaged in this manifest world of things or padarth. So, this is how this whole world actually works. Now, the purpose of our dialogue, purpose of our, meeting on Saturdays is to understand that bodiless consciousness, how it comes into different beings, how it manifests itself. Now, how body and mind limit the consciousness. Once we have this body of five great elements, the body is made of five great elements. We know that, we have understood that, we discussed that. Uh, it is also maintained by those five great elements because the food we eat comes from those five great elements, and that food keeps our body in shape. Now, for example, we eat apple or we eat wheat. If we look at the wheat plant, it is grown on the earth, which is one of the elements. It is nurtured by water and sunlight, which are other two elements. It requires a space to grow, which is another, the theater for all that. And it needs wind to grow and flourish. And that wheat nourishes our body, that apple nourishes our body. It is made of those five elements. So, all the species of plants and vegetables, there may be millions of them, they nourish our body, and that nourishment originally comes from where? Only from those five great elements. And those five great elements come from Mahat Tattva, and Mahat Tattva comes from that pure bodiless consciousness. So, this is the link we have to understand. Now, how that limits when we are embodied, the consciousness is embodied in, for example, my body, then it is called Jivatma. It is not Paramatma. Paramatma is the bodiless pure consciousness. Jivatma is embodied consciousness. Consciousness which have been limited by this body and mind, BMI, body, mind, intellect. They limit this consciousness. Now, my experience has been limited by this consciousness. So, the purpose of embodied consciousness is to limit the infinite experience into finite experience. You only have a limited experience. Like the purpose of a house is to convert the infinite sky into a small little place through the walls. And the same is the purpose of this body in which we have this consciousness. It is limited by our body and mind. In Upanishads, it has been explained with what we call Ghatakas and Chittakas. Chittakas is that infinite pure consciousness, and Ghatakas is that small little pot. A pot has been created. Now the pot is created in the Akash. Inside the pot is Akash. That is the useful part of pot is the container. It can contain things. Now that is also Akash. The walls of the pot is also Akash. It's made in Akash. The outside part of Ghat is also Akash. So Akash is everywhere, and that Ghat Akash is like embodied consciousness. The consciousness which has been captured or imprisoned within that body mind complex. So this body mind complex remains engaged with other body mind complexes because there is a tendency to attract similar kind of attributes. Like water ultimately trickles down to the ocean. If you keep air in a tire, it wants to get out of the tire and get into the air. If you fly the particles of earth in the space, they will ultimately like to come down and meet with the earth from where they originate. In our real world, a doctor wants to meet another doctor. A professor would be happy to meet another professor. So the similarity attract. So the same is in case of human beings. The embodied consciousness is attracted by another embodied consciousness. And therefore we interact. We have maximum interaction with other humans because that is similar in terms of the level of consciousness, in terms of appearance of the body mind complex. But then we also interact in limited way with other embodied consciousness like animals, the marine life, the birds. And then the second part is the physical existence, mountains, rivers, all that. So this enchanting world which we see arises from the infinite pure consciousness because of the functioning of Shakti. Shakti operates exactly the way the constitution gives rise to various institutions in a country. Similarly, the Shakti gives rise to Prakriti and the embodied consciousness in different species of life. So, this is how the whole universe works and operates. The pure consciousness is without mind, without attributes. It is complete in every respect. It is irreducible. But the finite experience of the body is limited. It has limits. It has a form. It is not complete in every respect. It is incomplete. It is apurn. It is not whole. It is a khand. It is a part. So this is what we have to understand in the holistic way to understand the whole concept of this universe. And this has been explained in variety of ways in Upanishads. What is this whole? What is this theater? And what is the play in the theater? So the play in the theater is of course most enchanting, like the the activities on a film, on a screen in a cinema hall, while there is nothing except light and sound, we are enchanted by that. Millions of people want to go and see that, and they spend 2 3 hours there, getting enchanted, forgetting rest of the world. Similarly, when we are embodied and we come into this world, we forget the pure consciousness from where we come, and we are constantly enchanted by the appearances in the world. And that is why these appearances are also called Maya. And that is why we say that Shakti, when it operates on Shiva, it creates the manifest world, and the Shakti is also defined as Maya in many of the writings because it creates things which are very enchanting for us. The whole process of liberation, the whole process that how we become swadhin under our own control, how we really become completely independent, is the process when we realize the infinite pure consciousness from where we come from. Now, that pure consciousness, to make it simpler, has also been called with three of its attributes: Sat Chit Anand. Satchitanand. Sat is eternal, that is irreducible, indestructible. It is the reality, only reality which exists. Chit is, it is a conscious reality. It is not inanimate, it is animate. And Anand is that it is full of bliss. It keeps you absolutely delighted, absolutely under bliss, with no pain of any nature at all. And this is also in slight addition, it is also called whole and complete knowledge. Prajnanam Brahma, that is the another Mahavakya in Upanishads or in Vedas. Prajnanam Brahma means that whole knowledge, the entire holistic knowledge, is actually embedded in that pure consciousness. So, if we understand this overall picture of this universe, that irreducible, pure consciousness is the only reality, that is the theater where everything is played, that is the theater from where the nature takes its birth, that is the theater from where all these planetary systems, all forms of life arise, and we remain enchanted in this world. And this body mind complex, which comes from the five great elements, actually reduces this infinite pure consciousness into finite experience confined to this body. And that is why it is called Jivatma. So, this is the bigger picture. I thought we should understand this bigger picture. This picture is very important to understand the integrity or the nitty gritty of the Upanishads. So I will stop here. Just want to add or repeat one more point, that this manifest world, which comes because of Shiva and Shakti's interaction, is constantly subject to change. Like we change the four walls within the space to a house or bedroom or theater or playground or shopping mall. Similarly, this manifest world coming or arising from the power of Shiva and Shakti, is subject to change, constantly undergoing change. And that change is the reality of the manifest world, while no change, or we call it, you know, eternal existence or changelessness, that is the characteristic of that pure infinite consciousness. So the bodiless infinite consciousness is exactly the opposite of the manifest consciousness, manifest world. Manifest world is limited, it has forms, it has names, it is not complete, it is in parts, it is a player in the theater, while the pure consciousness is infinite, it is complete in every respect, it is constant without any change, it is not subject to any change, and it is the theater for all the activities in this universe. So this difference we must understand. And the second thing we should understand is that from one single reality, all this plurality which we see comes through this process as the one single constitution gives birth to thousands of different bodies, whether it's parliament or election system or ministries or executive and the judiciary and variety of judges, eh, and all other institutions. Similarly, the pure bodiless consciousness gives birth to all the plurality, millions and trillions of things which we see in this world, they come from there. And the process through which they come into existence is simple. The five great elements of the nature, they provide the framework, they provide the body, and the consciousness comes from the pure consciousness. The seed comes from there, and then it fructifies. Like the power of the prime minister comes from the constitution, while the structure is done under that constitution. Similarly, the power of a human being, the chetana, the consciousness comes from that. Similarly, the body which we inherit, the mind we inherit, the intellect we do, BMI, also comes from there, but indirectly. So this is the greater picture we should understand. And the purpose of our spiritual sessions is firstly to understand that picture, and secondly to transcend the manifest world and then become one with that bodiless pure consciousness. Thank you.